She thinks I'm boring? Perfect. I'll show her what boredom looks like when it stops paying her bills. That's what flashed through my mind the night my wife, Emily, decided to humiliate me in front of an entire table of her friends. Everyone smirked, thinking I'd laugh it off, apologize for not being her fantasy prince from TikTok. But I didn't laugh. I didn't explain myself. I just stared at her, and something inside me snapped in absolute silence. Before I go on, don't forget to subscribe, like this story if it hits you, and leave a comment. It keeps these real-life twists coming. It all started at a Friday dinner party at a fancy downtown restaurant, the kind I could barely justify paying for. Yet Emily insisted we attend because appearances are everything. The lighting was dim, warm, romantic. Crystal glasses caught the soft glow of candlelight, and the hum of chatter filled the space like an elegant soundtrack to a perfect evening, at least for everyone else. That I sat beside her, hand on her chair, trying to be present despite a long week managing endless projects at work. Emily looked stunning. Red dress, curled hair, that effortless smile she once saved just for me. But now that smile was reserved for her friends' cameras and the idea of a life she believed she deserved. A life better than the one I apparently provided. Our friends, well, her friends, talked about their dream trips, designer handbags, and the perfect men they watched online. Influencers with private jets and 8-packs sculpted by personal trainers. I stayed quiet, drinking water, listening, telling myself these comparisons were harmless. Everyone fantasizes, right? Then someone asked her, Emily, what's the biggest challenge in your marriage? She didn't even pause. She grinned, rolled her eyes, and delivered a punchline she'd clearly rehearsed. Oh, my challenge? She tapped my arm like I was a pet dog. Try being married to someone who thinks success is just working a boring job and watching sports. I imagine a man with drive. A man who makes life exciting. Not. She waved her hand toward me like I was a piece of outdated furniture. This. Laughter. Quick, mean laughter. Even the waiter cracked a smile before catching himself. I felt heat rise in my chest. Humiliation mixed with something colder, sharper. I looked at her. She didn't look back. She was too busy enjoying her performance. Come on, her friend Hannah added. Don't you wish he was a little more ambitious? Like those guys you show us on TikTok? Millionaires by 30? Abs you could wash laundry on. Emily snorted. Please. He won't even try a new hairstyle. The laughter came again, bigger, freer. People avoided my eyes not because they cared, but because they didn't want to see the look on the face of the man being belittled. I clenched my jaw and swallowed everything I wanted to say. Years of supporting her dreams, paying rent, being there when she cried, erased with one careless joke. Inside, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet break in the foundation. I excused myself, went to the bathroom. I stared at my reflection, the same reflection she mocked. Brown hair slightly messy from the day, tie loosened, eyes tired. A man who worked hard, a man who loved hard. A man being treated like a temporary placeholder until her fantasy arrived. That I returned to the table, and when Emily saw me, she smirked, ready for another joke at my expense. But I didn't sit. Not right away. I looked directly at her. Really looked, and the noise of the restaurant faded into nothing. She noticed the silence first. Her smirk faltered. I moved my hand from the back of her chair. My voice was calm, too calm. If I'm not the man you imagined, I said, letting the words settle between us. Maybe you should think long and hard about what life looks like without me. Her friends shifted in their seats. A couple swallowed. The waiter froze mid-step. Emily blinked, startled. She wasn't expecting a response with teeth, but I didn't raise my voice. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. And I sure as hell didn't beg. I simply sat down again, peaceful on the outside, while inside a plan was forming. A quiet one. A powerful one. A plan she wouldn't see coming. Because she believed I was incapable of anything bold. She had no idea what silence could do. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because a clarity I'd never felt before had taken over me. I lay there in the dark beside Emily, listening to her soft breathing, realizing how distant she'd become even while lying inches from me. She didn't know that every breath I took was pulling further away from her. On Saturday morning, the sun came through the curtains bright as ever, but the light felt different to me. I got up quietly, showered, dressed, and made coffee as if it were any ordinary day. Emily eventually wandered into the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, not even looking at me. "We should go shopping today," she said flatly. "I want to check out that boutique on Fifth. They got new stock." Not even a thank you for the coffee I placed in front of her. She took a sip and made a face like it wasn't good enough. Her life was one long audition for some fantasy audience she'd created online. I watched her and wondered when the last time was that she'd looked at me like I mattered. While she tapped away on her screen, showing her friends another clip of some chiseled influencer telling women they deserve luxury and endless attention, I quietly gathered paperwork I'd been putting off too long. Bank statements, work benefits, a card with my brother Mark's number. I called him from the balcony. The October air was crisp, refreshing. "You okay?" he asked immediately. Mark always knew when something was wrong. I told him everything Emily had said at dinner. He cursed under his breath and told me I could stay with him anytime. "You don't have to let anyone belittle you, especially not your own wife," he said. His words hit with more impact than he knew. I hung up and stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of years fall off my shoulders. When I walked back inside, Emily was laughing at another video. I realized she was chasing excitement in fiction while ignoring the real partner who supported her. She didn't want a man. She wanted a show. Later that day, during lunch at home, she delivered another jab. "You know, if you worked out more, maybe you'd have the confidence to achieve something big," she said, staring at her reflection in the microwave door instead of me. I nodded like it didn't bother me, even though each comment carved deeper. I looked around our apartment, our wedding photo on the wall, the one where she smiled at me like I was enough. I wondered where that version of her had gone. That evening, we had a small get-together with neighbors in our building's lounge. Emily dressed up like she was walking a red carpet and spent half the time complaining to anyone who would listen that I lacked ambition, that I had no spark, that she needed a man who made life feel like a movie. People smiled politely, but their eyes kept drifting to me, recognizing the cruelty in her voice. They all waited for me to defend myself, to fight back, to argue. I didn't. Silence was my shield. When we returned home, she collapsed onto the couch, scrolling again. She didn't notice me watching her, studying the way she lived through a screen. Finally, without looking up, she said, "You know all those success stories online? Those men don't settle for being average. Women like me inspire them to become great." She laughed, pleased with herself. I quietly walked to the closet. My heart beat steady, not frantic. I grabbed a duffel bag and began folding clothes neatly. Socks, jeans, shirts. She glanced over with casual annoyance. "What are you doing?" "Packing." My voice was calm, like I was answering a mundane question. She sat up, confused, then irritated. "Don't be dramatic. It's a joke. You're too sensitive." I didn't respond because we both knew those weren't jokes. They were truths she wanted to be public entertainment. I gathered my laptop, toothbrush, wallet. She finally stood up, trying to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "Where are you going?" "Away," I said. "For how long?" "Long enough." She stepped closer, frustration rising. "So now you're leaving? Seriously? You can't just walk out because you're upset over a couple comments." I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time in a long time, she was the one who looked small, unsure. "Emily," I said, "I've tried for years to be the man you needed, but I can't compete with a fantasy. And I won't let you tear me down because reality doesn't look like your phone screen." She opened her mouth to argue, but I turned away, grabbed my bag, and walked to the door. "You're just proving my point," she snapped. "You have no fight in you." I paused at the doorway. "You're wrong," I answered. "This is the fight." Then I left. The hallway felt strangely peaceful. Every step removed another chain I hadn't realized I was wearing. I drove to my brother's house, letting the city lights blur by, feeling something unfamiliar rising in me. Strength, direction, the beginning of a life where I wasn't someone's punchline. Mark opened the door with a pat on my back and a cold beer ready. "To better beginnings," he said. I nodded. For the first time in years, I believed there could be one. The first morning at Mark's place felt like stepping into a different version of myself. I woke up without the dull ache of anticipating criticism. Mark had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gym at 7. You're coming." I almost laughed. I hadn't stepped into a gym in months, maybe years. But something in me refused to stay stagnant anymore. The gym smelled like rubber mats and iron, a sin of effort and self-respect. Mark didn't go easy on me. After every set, I wanted to quit, but pride kept me pushing forward. By the time we left, my muscles burned with a satisfying fire I'd forgotten was possible. We stopped by a barber shop, and Mark insisted I try a new haircut. I looked in the mirror afterward and barely recognized the man staring back. He looked younger, sharper, unafraid. At work, everything seemed different too. I wasn't weighed down by Emily's constant judgment. When my boss mentioned a new leadership position opening soon, I didn't shrink back like I usually did. I asked what it would take to earn it. He seemed pleasantly surprised, nodding like he'd been waiting for me to finally show up as the man he knew I could be. Evenings with Mark were simple: home-cooked meals, laughter, talking about old memories and future plans. Nights were quiet, and silence finally felt peaceful instead of hostile. Meanwhile, Emily started texting. First one message, "When are you coming home?" Then another, "We need to talk." Later, "You're acting childish." I didn't respond. Ignoring her wasn't revenge, it was recovery. After 2 weeks, she switched tactics. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "Let's just forget all this." But apologies that come only when someone loses control don't hold much value. I focused on building something real instead. Days turned into weeks. I kept hitting the gym, upgrading my wardrobe piece by piece, reading books I'd always put off. I took long walks to clear my mind, and sometimes caught myself smiling without a reason. One Friday after work, Mark convinced me to go to a rooftop bar downtown. The skyline looked alive, not like the cage it once felt like. That's when I met Lauren. She worked in marketing for a tech company in the same district. She wasn't flashy or obsessed with attention. She listened. She laughed at my jokes without making me a joke. When she asked why my marriage was on pause, as I'd vaguely phrased it, she didn't pry. She just smiled softly, like she understood that some wounds weren't ready for air yet. We talked for hours, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Not compared, not graded. Seen. Over the next month, life kept improving. My boss called me into his office and told me I'd earned the promotion. More responsibility, better pay, a private office. When he shook my hand, I felt pride instead of fear. I started dressing sharper, standing straighter, speaking with more certainty. Mark noticed. "Look at you," he said one morning. "You're not even the same guy who showed up on my doorstep." And he was right. I was becoming the man I always wanted to be. A man who didn't need to seek approval just to feel worthy. Around that time, Emily began calling instead of texting. Long voicemails full of tears and confusion. "I didn't mean to push you away," she cried in one. "I just wanted you to grow. You can't leave me like this. I need you." Those words used to feel like a command. Now they felt like a reminder of a life I'd escaped. I didn't reply. Healing doesn't require reopening old wounds. I wasn't cruel about it. I just kept moving. Lauren and I continued spending time together. We took walks, tried new restaurants, watched movies on Mark's couch. She made me feel calm and excited at the same time. One evening, after she'd left, Mark looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Careful," he warned playfully. "Big steps." "I know," I said. "I'm taking them one at a time." But the truth was, every day felt like a step towards something brighter. A few more weeks passed, and suddenly the holiday season crept up. Decorations went up in office hallways, and corporate events filled everyone's calendars. I received an invitation to the company's annual year-end celebration, mandatory attendance. Usually I dreaded these things. Small talk, forced smiles. But now, I felt like I belonged. I was confident, steady, renewed. What I didn't expect, though, was a name on the guest list that nearly stopped me in my tracks. Emily. My company had partnered with hers earlier that year, and she would be there representing her department. I stared at the email for a long moment. Not with fear, not with hesitation, just a strange calmness. The kind you feel when the storm has passed and you're standing on solid ground again. Life has a way of circling back, not to test you, but to show you how far you've come. I closed the email and straightened my posture. No matter what happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't returning to who I used to be. Not for anyone. The night of the corporate event arrived quicker than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror adjusting a navy suit that fit me better than anything I'd ever owned before. The man staring back looked composed, confident, even a little dangerous in all the right ways. Mark clapped me on the shoulder before I left, proud as if he were sending his kid off to graduation. The venue was a grand ballroom downtown, filled with gold lights and soft music. People I'd worked beside for years looked at me with a kind of newfound respect. Some even did a double take before greeting me, as if they weren't sure I was the same guy who once blended into the background. I was speaking with a couple of colleagues when the doors opened behind me. I didn't need to turn around to feel her presence. Emily. Her heels clicked across the floor with that familiar rhythm, confident and attention-seeking. But there was a hesitation in it too, a crack in the performance. I finally looked her way, and there she was, dressed elegantly, hair curled just so, the picture-perfect version she always chased. Her eyes scanned the room until they found me. Her expression froze, like she'd seen a ghost that wasn't supposed to look alive and thriving. She started toward me immediately, determination carried in each step. Before she reached me, someone gently slipped her hand into mine. Lauren. She'd arrived just moments earlier, smiling up at me like she was happy to simply be near. Emily stopped a few feet away, stunned, eyes darting between us. The confident mask she wore cracked. "Hi, Mike," she said, voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. She glanced at Lauren with forced politeness. "And who's this?" Lauren politely introduced herself. Emily nodded stiffly, then asked if she could speak with me alone. Lauren gave me a reassuring look. I squeezed her hand once before letting go and followed Emily a few steps to the side. The music and chatter surrounded us, but suddenly it felt like we were isolated in a spotlight. "You look different," she said. "Better. Thank you," I replied simply. She took a shaky breath. "I've been thinking a lot. About us. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I was stupid. I compared you to fantasies and made you feel small. I miss you. I want to fix things." Her voice trembled, and her eyes glistened. There was no mockery left in her, no smugness. Just regret, the kind that arrives too late. I listened without anger. The numbness I once felt had been replaced by clarity. "Emily," I said calmly, "I spent years believing I wasn't good enough for you. I twisted myself into knots trying to meet standards you kept moving. But the truth is, you didn't want a husband. You wanted a character in a story someone else made up." She flinched as if the words cut deep. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I see that now. You're everything I wanted. I didn't appreciate you. Please come home." Home. That word used to anchor me. Now it meant a cage I'd broken out of. I nodded slowly, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. She had finally realized the truth. But the truth came with consequences. "Emily," I said, meeting her eyes with a calm strength she'd never seen from me before. "You imagined a future without me. Now you have to live in it." She reached for me, desperate, but I stepped back. Not out of cruelty, out of freedom. Her face crumpled, the realization crushing her like a weight she didn't expect to fall. Around us, conversations continued, glasses clinked, laughter filled the room. Life didn't stop for her heartbreak. I turned and walked back toward Lauren, who waited with gentle understanding in her eyes. She slipped her hand back into mine without a word, accepting me without needing to reshape me. As we moved through the room together, coworkers nodded with respect, some even offering congratulations on my promotion. Emily stood alone at the edge of the crowd, watching a version of me she never believed I could become. A version she tried to hold back. A version she lost. Later that evening, I stepped outside onto the balcony for a breath of cool winter air. The city lights stretched out like endless possibilities. Lauren joined me, leaning into my side comfortably. I didn't feel like a man rebuilding after destruction. I felt like a man who had finally chosen himself. Some people think strength is loud, fighting, arguing, yelling to be heard. But I learned something else. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is walk away from who they were and never look back. And in that moment, the silence between Emily and me said more than any argument ever could. If you made it this far, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Your support means everything and helps bring more stories like this to life.